The United States has launched what President Donald Trump calls a massive and ongoing military operation against Iran, coordinated with Israel. And the ripple effects are already being felt across the Middle East. This isn't just another diplomatic warning. According to official statements, it's a synchronized military action that both governments say was planned for months. But here's the unexpected twist. While the operation is framed as a defensive move against imminent threats, it also comes after weeks of public messaging directly aimed at the Iranian people. So what exactly happened in those early hours of February 28th? And why did this moment become the tipping point? Let's break it down carefully, step by step. It began around 2:30 a.m. when President Trump released an 8-minute video statement announcing the start of what he described as major combat operations inside Iran. According to publicly available information, the United States and Israel carried out what the Israel Defense Forces described as a broad strike in full synchronization and coordination. Reports suggest months of joint planning preceded the operation, but here's where the situation escalated quickly. Iran reportedly responded by targeting a U.S. military base in Bahrain. Other Gulf nations, including Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, stated that missiles entering their airspace were intercepted. That immediate back and forth raises a critical question. Was this operation designed as a limited strike, or the opening phase of something larger? In his address, President Trump framed the mission as defensive, saying its objective was to eliminate imminent threats and protect American personnel and allies. He also referenced concerns about Iran's nuclear activities, claiming the regime had rejected opportunities to abandon nuclear ambitions. However, Iran has historically maintained that its nuclear program is for civilian purposes, and international debates over compliance have continued for years. So, why now? To understand that, we need to rewind. In late December 2025, protests intensified in Tehran, following economic turmoil and a sharp decline in the national currency. Demonstrations reportedly expanded in scale, drawing global attention. In early January, President Trump stated publicly that his administration was monitoring the situation very closely. Days later, he posted direct messages encouraging Iranian citizens to continue protesting. That messaging was highly unusual for a sitting U.S. president during an active domestic crisis inside another sovereign nation. And here's the mini rehook. Was the military operation primarily about national security, or was it connected to the broader political unrest inside Iran? According to statements made at the time, U.S. officials began repositioning personnel from certain Middle Eastern bases in mid-January. Media outlets reported evacuations of non-essential staff from key regional installations. Military analysts often note that such movements can signal preparation, but they can also serve as deterrence. So which was it? Fast forward to June 2025. Earlier strikes had already targeted Iranian nuclear facilities, which President Trump described at the time as a spectacular military success. Iranian forces later responded by firing missiles toward the Al Udeid air base in Qatar, the largest U.S. base in the region, though Qatari officials said their air defenses intercepted them. This pattern, strike, retaliation, interception, has created a tense cycle over the past year. Now, in February 2026, the language has intensified. In his latest address, President Trump warned that additional targets could be hit if peace does not come quickly. At the same time, he stated that the administration had taken steps to minimize risks to U.S. personnel, while acknowledging that military operations inherently carry danger. Here's another key detail that adds complexity. During the announcement, Trump also addressed the Iranian people directly, urging them to stay sheltered and describing the moment as an opportunity for political change. That type of messaging blurs the line between military action and political signaling. So what does that mean for regional stability? Strategically speaking, coordinated U.S.-Israel operations send a powerful message of alliance unity. But they also increase the risk of broader regional involvement, especially when multiple neighboring countries host U.S. bases. And remember, several Gulf states confirmed intercepting missiles within their airspace shortly after the operation began, which leads to the next crucial question. How contained can this remain? Military experts often emphasize that escalation depends not just on initial strikes, but on responses, counter-responses, and diplomatic back channels that may not be visible publicly. As of now, official statements emphasize defense, deterrence, and long-term security objectives, but the region is watching closely, and global markets are too. Energy supply routes, international alliances, and nuclear diplomacy are all interconnected here. A localized operation rarely stays localized for long in such a strategically dense region. So where does this leave us? We have a coordinated U.S.-Israel strike, immediate regional responses, direct messaging to the Iranian public, ongoing nuclear tensions, and a history of recent retaliation cycles. Each piece connects to the next. But the bigger picture might not be military at all. It may be about leverage, because when public statements mix national security concerns with political encouragement inside another country, the message becomes layered, military on the surface, strategic beneath. And that's where the real uncertainty lies. So what are the long-term implications? First, we need to look at alliances. The joint nature of the strike signals deep coordination between Washington and Jerusalem. While military cooperation between the two countries is long-standing, openly synchronized action of this scale sends a message far beyond the immediate targets. But who else is reading that message? Regional powers like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the Gulf states are now recalculating their positions. Several of them host U.S. military assets. When missiles are reportedly intercepted over their airspace, neutrality becomes harder to maintain. At the same time, global powers such as Russia and China are likely assessing how this shift affects their strategic interests in the region. Public statements so far have emphasized restraint and stability, but diplomatic positioning often happens quietly. And then there's the economic dimension. Whenever tensions rise in the Persian Gulf, energy markets react. Even without supply disruptions, uncertainty alone can move prices. Insurance costs for shipping lanes increase. Investors pause. Governments prepare contingency plans. So while headlines focus on military terminology, the ripple effects extend into global economics within hours. But what about Iran's next move? Historically, responses in similar situations have ranged from direct retaliation to indirect pressure through regional partners. Analysts often point out that asymmetric responses, cyber activity, proxy engagement, diplomatic maneuvering, can be just as impactful as conventional strikes. However, as of the latest public information, official Iranian communications have focused on condemning the operation and asserting national sovereignty. Now, here's the critical tension point. President Trump described the mission as ongoing. That word matters. Ongoing implies flexibility. It leaves room for expansion or de-escalation, depending on developments. At the same time, he acknowledged potential risks to U.S. personnel, emphasizing that precautions were taken. That dual message, strength paired with caution, suggests an attempt to control escalation while maintaining strategic pressure. But can escalation truly be controlled once operations begin? Modern conflicts rarely follow a straight line. They evolve through reactions, miscalculations, and diplomatic backchannels that the public never sees. And that's why the messaging to the Iranian population stands out. Encouraging citizens to envision political change during an active military operation is highly unusual in modern statecraft. It introduces a political dimension that goes beyond defense narratives. Some analysts argue that such messaging aims to separate a government from its people. Others caution that it can complicate diplomatic pathways. Either way, it shifts the psychological landscape. Now let's zoom out. Over the past year, there have been repeated warnings, repositioning of military personnel, earlier strikes on nuclear-related facilities, and retaliatory missile exchanges. Each moment added another layer of tension. February 28th appears to be the culmination of that buildup. But is it a climax or the beginning of a new phase? That depends on what happens next. Will diplomatic channels reopen behind the scenes? Will regional actors push for mediation? Or will additional strikes reinforce a prolonged standoff? History shows that even intense military exchanges can be followed by sudden negotiations. Strategic pressure is often paired with diplomatic leverage. And here's another overlooked detail. Global public opinion now plays a major role. Social media spreads official statements instantly. Markets react in real time. International organizations issue calls for restraint within hours. This environment makes sustained escalation costly, politically and economically. So the coming days matter more than the initial announcement itself, because sometimes the real story isn't the strike, it's the response to the strike. Right now, the situation represents a turning point in U.S.-Iran relations, at least in the short term. Whether it leads to broader conflict, rapid de-escalation, or renewed negotiations depends on decisions being made behind closed doors. Understanding this moment requires looking beyond headlines at alliances, economics, messaging strategies, and historical patterns. And one key question remains. If this operation was designed to prevent future threats, what does success actually look like?